He never raised his voice, just nodded and swallowed what hurt. For years, he believed staying quiet meant staying strong. But one sentence cracked that silence, and nothing was the same after. I used to think anger meant strength. It made me feel alive, like I still had something to fight for, like I was still in control. But I wasn't. I was just tired. Angry people are rarely powerful. They're just exhausted people who haven't found a place to lay down their pain. It crept in quietly. At first it felt justified. A comment that stung, a promise broken, a silence where there should have been support. Then it became a habit. I started measuring people not by who they were, but by how often they disappointed me. Which was often. You expect the people closest to you to see you, really see you, not because you scream, not because you beg, but because you've been consistent, loyal, giving. You hold the door open long enough, someone should walk through it with gratitude, right? They don't. And when they don't, something inside you starts to rot. That's what anger really is, rot. Silent, invisible decay. It eats away at the part of you that still believes in kindness. I held on to my expectations like they were proof of my worth. But they were just anchors. I kept sinking while pretending I was standing tall. There was no single moment where I exploded. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't loud. That's the thing. Some of the angriest people I've met never raised their voice. They just disappeared, piece by piece. First, from conversations, then from dinners, eventually from themselves. You smile, but your eyes are already gone. I didn't want to become that man, but I did. Bitterness disguised itself as wisdom. Sarcasm replaced sincerity. I called it maturity, but it was just distance. Emotional coldness, dressed up as learning my lesson. The worst part? No one noticed. People don't notice when a kind person starts shutting down. They only notice when you finally stop serving their comfort. That's when they call you different. But by then, it's too late. The truth is ugly. I was never angry because of what people did to me. I was angry because I kept hoping they'd be different. I expected them to read between the lines, to remember the little things, to show up without being asked. I built my rage on invisible contracts they never signed. One day, sitting outside in silence, an old friend said it to me, just once, calmly, no lecture, no drama, just this. You're still angry because you still think they owe you. It hit me harder than any fight I ever had, because he was right. And when I finally accepted that, when I stopped demanding fairness from people who couldn't give it, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. You don't need to win the argument. You don't need to get closure. You just need to stop making your peace depend on someone else's apology. That was the moment I stopped being angry. I didn't become passive. I became clear. Clear about what's mine to carry and what's not. Most people don't realize who they're really mad at. In the next part, I'll tell you the second truth I had to face and why it hurt even more than the first. You might see your own reflection in it. People don't just get angry out of nowhere. There's a lie beneath every outburst. And the biggest one? That we were only trying to help, that we meant well, that we expected nothing in return. That's what I told myself for years. But it wasn't true. I helped people because deep down I needed to be needed. I said yes when I wanted to say no, not because I was kind, but because I was afraid of being forgotten. I overgave, not from love, but from fear. And when that fear wasn't soothed by applause or gratitude, I called it betrayal. The moment I saw it, I felt sick. I wasn't the victim. I was the negotiator, offering pieces of myself in exchange for affection, respect, approval. The only problem was I never said the price out loud. I made silent deals in my head and got furious when people didn't pay a bill they never saw. We call it being good. No, it's emotional bargaining. It's silent manipulation, and it always comes with a hidden timer. Tick, 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 until the explosion. Let me be blunt. No one owes you love for your sacrifices. No one is required to thank you for your silence, and no one is responsible for filling the void you refuse to face. You give clean, without expectation, or don't give at all. That was the second hard truth I had to learn, and it broke something in me. The image I had of myself as the misunderstood good guy, gone. What remained was a man who gave away his time, energy, love, hoping it would buy him a place he didn't have to beg to stay in. It never worked. That's why anger was always lurking, because the moment someone didn't match the script I'd written for them, I felt betrayed. But they weren't betraying me. They were just being themselves. I was the one pretending. You want peace? Then stop playing both sides, the martyr and the judge. That's what I had to do. Strip away the noble excuses. Look at the mess without flinching. I wasn't kind. I was scared. I wasn't generous. I was desperate. I wasn't angry at them. I was ashamed of how far I bent just to be seen. And when you realize that, when you finally say it out loud, you stop needing to get even. You stop rewriting the past. You just stop. That's when the healing starts. Not with forgiveness, not with revenge, with responsibility. The kind that doesn't blame your parents, or your partner, or your boss. The kind that looks in the mirror and says, I handed them the knife. They just used it. But there's something even worse than anger, something colder, something most people carry without knowing it's killing them. And in the next part, I'll tell you exactly what it is. Has one sentence ever changed your life? If this story touched something deep in you, maybe a memory, maybe a wound, don't keep it silent. Tell me in the comments, what's the one sentence you'll never forget? And if you don't want to miss the next time a quiet voice speaks a loud truth, subscribe. Because some stories don't scream, they whisper exactly what you needed to hear. There's a moment that's worse than anger. It's the moment you stop reacting. Not because you've found peace, but because you've gone numb. That's where I ended up. It didn't happen after a major betrayal or some dramatic fight. It came quietly, after years of collecting small disappointments and swallowing them whole. One day I realized I hadn't raised my voice in years, not because I became wiser, but because nothing felt worth the effort. I wasn't calm. I was disconnected. You smile when people expect it. You say, it's fine, even when it's not. You sit across from someone who hurt you, and they'll never know, because you no longer think telling them would change a thing. That's not strength. That's emotional shutdown. It tricks you. You think you've matured, that you've risen above it. But deep down, you've just stopped believing that honesty matters. You've stopped reaching, stopped risking. You wear politeness like armor, and silence becomes your language. I called it boundaries. It wasn't. It was fear of being dismissed, of being too much, of hearing, why are you still upset about that? So instead of yelling, you shrink. You become easy to be around, pleasant, uncomplicated. But inside, you're gone. I remember sitting at a dinner table once, surrounded by people I loved, and feeling absolutely nothing. They laughed, they passed dishes, and I sat there, smiling on the outside, empty on the inside. That's the kind of loneliness no room can cure. What causes that kind of shutdown? Repeated neglect, emotional starvation, the slow erosion of self-worth from being ignored just enough times that you stop asking. You stop asking for help. Stop asking to be heard. Stop asking to be loved without conditions. You become low maintenance, which sounds like a compliment, but it's just another word for emotionally malnourished. The truth is, people don't just wake up numb. They get trained into it. Each time they express a need and it's met with silence or irritation, they learn to go quiet. Each time they show pain and someone rolls their eyes, they close the door a little tighter, until one day it locks, and by the time someone notices, they're talking through a wall. I used to think not caring was freedom. It's not. It's prison dressed as peace. What finally pulled me out? Not a person, not a conversation. It was a moment when I looked at myself and couldn't recognize the man I'd become. I didn't miss anyone. I didn't need anything. And I realized, that's not healing. That's death in disguise. Real healing? It's messy, loud, vulnerable. It means wanting again, feeling again. It means saying, I care. And if I lose, I lose. But I refuse to be silent just to keep the peace that's killing me. That's when you come back to life. That's when the anger finally dies. Not because you buried it, but because you finally let yourself grieve what never was. I spent years letting people decide what I was worth. Not directly. They never said, you're less. But in how they treated me, how quickly they forgot me, how rarely they asked, how are you, really? I took it all as evidence. If they ignored me, I thought I wasn't important. If they walked away, I thought I was too much. If they praised someone else, I assumed I wasn't enough. That's the trap. You measure yourself with someone else's silence. It starts small. You overthink one unanswered message, then one skipped invitation. Eventually, you're reading meaning into every sigh, every pause, every lack of eye contact. And without realizing it, you start shrinking. You speak softer. You ask for less. You smile more, not because you're happy, but because it makes them comfortable. And deep down, you hope that maybe, just maybe, if you become small enough, they'll finally choose to stay. That's not love. That's survival. And it's built on a lie so painful, most people never question it, that your value depends on their response. Let me ask you something hard. Who told you your needs were too much? Who made you believe that your pain was inconvenient? Who taught you to apologize for having emotions? More importantly, why did you believe them? The answer doesn't matter as much as what you do next. See, no one can strip you of your worth, but they can convince you to give it away, piece by piece, until you forget you ever had it. And the moment you start trading your authenticity for belonging, you've already lost both. I've done it. I made myself agreeable to people who didn't even like me. I tried to earn love by being useful, quiet, impressive. I was a man constantly auditioning for a role in someone else's story. And every time I didn't get the part, I thought it was because I wasn't good enough. It took me decades to ask the most important question of my life. Who gave them the right to decide who I am? No one. Not your parents, not your partner, not your boss, and certainly not the friend who disappears every time you speak your truth. You want your peace back? Then stop giving strangers a vote in your identity. People who truly care won't ask you to earn their respect. They won't punish you for needing something real. They won't leave when your joy makes them uncomfortable. So here's the truth I learned the hard way. You don't need to be less to be loved. You don't need to be quieter to be accepted. You don't need to be perfect to deserve peace. Your worth was never up for debate. But you'll spend your whole life trying to prove it until you decide to stop asking for permission. And when you finally stop, really stop, it's not anger that comes next. It's silence. But this time, it's yours. Not because you've shut down, but because you've come home. Setting boundaries sounds noble until you actually do it. That's when the mask comes off. The same people who praised you for being so kind suddenly call you cold. The ones who always leaned on your silence now say you're selfish for speaking. And those who took your constant yes as a given, they'll be the loudest when you finally say no. But the truth is simple. They never loved you. They loved the version of you that made their life easier. I learned that when I stopped explaining myself. For years, I'd bend, justify, soften every truth, just to make sure no one misunderstood me. I was terrified of being seen as difficult. God forbid someone thought I had edges. But guess what? People misunderstood me anyway, and I was exhausted, not from conflict, but from trying to prevent it. You don't need to be cruel to set boundaries, but you do need to be willing to be misunderstood. That's the price. Because the moment you stop managing everyone else's comfort, they'll accuse you of changing. They'll say you're distant, harsh, bitter. What they mean is you're no longer available for their expectations. I had to unlearn a lifetime of conditioning. That being good meant being agreeable. That being loved meant never upsetting anyone. That being respected meant proving myself every second. I stopped. I stopped apologizing for being tired. Stopped laughing at jokes that made me feel small. Stopped entertaining conversations that left me emptier than I started. And no, it didn't feel empowering at first. It felt lonely. Because when you start respecting yourself, the room gets quieter. Not everyone leaves, but the ones who stayed for the wrong reasons, they fade fast. Let them. It's not your job to teach grown people how to treat others with basic decency, and it's not your burden to carry their disappointment for the boundaries they refuse to set for themselves. You're allowed to choose peace over performance. You're allowed to say, "This is what I can give, no more." You're allowed to protect your time, your mind, your heart, even if it makes others uncomfortable. And yes, it will make them uncomfortable, especially if you've built your identity on being the dependable one, the strong one, the one who never needs anything back. But here's the twist. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. The people who are meant to walk with you won't ask you to erase yourself to stay. They'll adjust. They'll listen. They'll meet you halfway. Everyone else? They'll get loud when you stop playing your part, then go quiet when they realize you're not coming back to the stage. And that silence, that's not rejection. That's your freedom echoing back to you. I don't miss who I used to be. The man who over-explained. The one who waited for permission to be hurt. The version of me that kept showing up for people who wouldn't have noticed if I stopped breathing. That man was always tired, not because life was hard, but because he lived it on other people's terms. He confused approval with connection and silence with wisdom. He carried anger like armor and called it self-respect. But it wasn't. It was fear. Fear of being left. Fear of not mattering. Fear that if I stopped giving, I'd stop existing. Then one day, a sentence shattered that illusion. You're still angry because you still think they owe you. I let it sit. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just let the weight of it press down until I finally broke. And when I broke, something beautiful happened. Nothing. There was no grand revelation, no dramatic moment, just silence. Not the bitter kind, not the silence that comes from exhaustion or resignation. A different kind, a clean one. No noise, no fight, no need to explain. Just the quiet understanding that nobody owes me anything. And that doesn't make me worthless. It makes me free. This isn't the kind of peace people post about. It doesn't look like yoga or sunsets or self-help quotes. It looks like walking away from a room without needing to slam the door. It looks like reading a cruel message and feeling nothing. It looks like being unseen and not shrinking. It looks like knowing you're alone, but not feeling lost. That kind of peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from letting go of games you were never meant to play. I no longer wait for apologies. I don't keep score. I don't measure my worth by who calls, who shows up, who claps when I speak. They're allowed to misunderstand me. They're allowed to leave. They're allowed to call me selfish, distant, dramatic. That's not my weight to carry anymore. If you're expecting some grand final thought, I don't have one. That's the beauty of it. For the first time in my life, I don't need to explain what I've learned. I just live it. I don't burn bridges. I just stop walking toward people who set fire to my boundaries. I don't chase closure. I trust that what's gone is gone, and that's okay. I don't fight to be seen. I see myself, and it's enough. No rage, no revenge, no righteous speeches. Just a man who finally came back to himself. And if you've made it this far, maybe you're starting to do the same.